The planet of Nuria once shined like a green jewel in the dark of space. Now it was only water and storm. A broken world where nothing stood still. The sky was heavy with black clouds. Lightning tore through the air like angry claws. And waves as tall as mountains swallowed the cities one by one. Sarai, an alien mother with blue skin and silver eyes, held her child close on top of a broken tower. The tower shook with every crash of thunder. Below them, the world roared, flooded with endless dark water. Her small son Leo coughed weakly, his eyes tired and scared. "Mom, are we going to die?" he whispered. Sarai pulled him tighter, her heart burning with fear and love. "No, my little star, someone will hear us," she said. Though her voice trembled, she had sent over 100 distress calls through her broken communicator. But no one ever answered. The other ships had left long ago. The alien leaders had called for evacuation when the planet's core broke apart. But only the rich and powerful had escaped. The poor were left behind, left to drown in their own home. Sarai had tried to find a ship, but every port was gone. Every craft destroyed now. There were only 2 of them. The wind screamed through the tower's cracks. Salt water hit Sarai's face and burned her eyes. She looked at the small blinking light on her communicator. The signal was weak. Barely alive still, she pressed the button again. "This is Sarai of Nuria, requesting rescue. Anyone hearing this? Please respond." Static, then silence. Her hope was fading like the light in the storm. She kissed Leo's forehead. "Sleep. My little one," she whispered. "If help does not come, then we will meet the stars together." But the universe had other plans. Far above the clouds, through the endless lightning and storm winds, something moved. A faint hum crossed the air. Something metallic, something alive. Sarai looked up, her eyes wide. What is that?" she whispered. A dark shape broke through the clouds. Glowing lights along its wings. It was not alien. The design was different. Strange, more square and strong. The ship moved against the storm, cutting through chaos like a blade through water. It was a human cruiser. For a moment, Sarai forgot how to breathe. Her people had once fought humans. The war had ended years ago. But the fear remained in every alien story. Humans were called monsters, cruel and reckless. They said humans would rather die than lose, that they never left anyone behind, not even their enemies. The cruiser tilted, scanning the broken tower. A blue beam of light passed over her and Leo. Sarai shielded her child's eyes. "Don't look," she said softly. "It might be dangerous." Then a voice came through the air, breaking the silence of the storm. "This is Captain Rylan of the Earth Alliance. Hold on and I'm coming for you," human words. Clear and strong. Sarai froze. The communicator crackled with the same voice. The signal caught on her old device. "Repeat, this is Captain Rylan. Survivors detected on Tower 7 preparing for retrieval." She stared at the communicator. Her hand shaking, Leo tugged her arm. "Mom, it's a human," he whispered. "They came." Her heart beat fast. She didn't know whether to feel hope or fear. The humans had no reason to save her. They didn't owe her people anything, but the voice, it sounded kind. The cruiser descended. Its engines fighting the storm, the water below turned wild. The tower began to shake harder. Sarai grabbed Leo and held tight. "Hold on, my star," she said. "Hold on to me." Lightning struck the sea. The tower cracked, stones fell into the water below. The cruiser came closer, lowering a light beam that opened into a hatch door. A human figure appeared, wearing a dark suit, face hidden by a visor. He shouted something she couldn't hear. The wind stole his words, but then he jumped, falling through the rain, landing just a few feet away. Sarai gasped. The human stood tall even against the storm. He carried a rescue tether, glowing blue. He looked at her and raised a hand. "We have to go now," he shouted. She hesitated, her heart torn between trust and fear. The tower leaned dangerously. A loud crack echoed. It was breaking. "Please," the human shouted again. "You'll both die here." Sarai looked down at Leo, his small hands clutching her, his eyes full of tears. The storm howled around them. She took one deep breath, closed her eyes and nodded. The human ran forward, clipped the tether around her waist, and then around Leo. "Hold tight," he said, pressing a button on his wrist. The world exploded with light. The tether pulled them upward through the rain and wind. The tower collapsed beneath them, crashing into the ocean like a dying beast. Water swallowed everything, but they rose higher and higher. The human pulled them into the open hatch of his cruiser, sealing it shut. Inside, it was warm, quiet and dry. Sarai collapsed on the floor, Coughing, Leo clung to her. The human knelt beside them. His voice softer now. "You're safe," he said. Pulling off his helmet, his face was tired but kind. Sarai looked into his human eyes, brown, full of strange warmth. Her lips trembled. Why did you save us?" she whispered. Rylan smiled faintly. "Because no one else would." Outside, the storm raged, but inside the small cruiser, something new began. Not war, not fear, but a fragile thread of hope. And as Sarai looked out the window at the drowning world, she whispered one word full of awe and disbelief. "Human?" The cruiser trembled as the storm hit harder. Rain hammered its metal shell, and lightning flashed outside like white fire. Inside, Captain Rylan stood near the controls. Breathing fast but calm, he looked back at the two figures on the floor, the alien mother and her child. Dripping wet and shaking, the boy hid behind his mother. His eyes were wide, his small body trembling. Sarai held him close, her face pale but her gaze strong. She was afraid. Rylan could see that, but he didn't blame her. To her, he was not a savior, he was a human. A creature from stories told in fear. Rylan took off his gloves and crouched down. His voice was quiet, careful. "You're safe here. No one will hurt you," he said. Sarai looked at him unsure. Her voice was weak. "Humans don't come to Nuria. Why?" "Because I was the only one near enough to hear your signal," Rylan replied. "And I don't leave people to die." For a moment, she said nothing. Her eyes softened just a little. The small child peeked out, staring at Rylan's strange face. Rough, scarred human. "What's your name, little one?" Rylan asked. The boy whispered, "Leo." Rylan smiled gently. "Nice to meet you, Leo. I'm Rylan." The child blinked. Then he whispered, "You're real?" Rylan chuckled. "Yeah, I think so." Sarai wrapped her arms around Leo again. "We need to leave this planet. The storms will break everything soon." "I know," Rylan said, walking back to the control seat. He pressed a few switches. The ship hummed louder, preparing for takeoff. "I'll get us out." The engines roared, the cruiser lifted. Shaking through the rain and wind outside, the water spread like an endless ocean, full of lightning reflections. Then suddenly the radar beeped. Rylan frowned. "That's strange. What is it?" Sarai asked quickly. "Another signal," he said. "Coming from underwater?" Sarai's face turned pale. "No, it can't be. Everything below is dead. The floods killed all life." Rylan checked the screen again. The signal was weak but repeating, like a heartbeat. "This isn't random. Someone or something is down there." Leo looked up, curious. "Maybe others are still alive." Sarai shook her head. "No, it's impossible." Rylan turned to her. "Impossible doesn't stop me," he said quietly. He typed a few commands and the ship adjusted direction. Diving lower, the ocean below looked endless and black. As the cruiser went closer, pressure sensors blinked red, warning him of danger. Sarai stood behind him, gripping a rail. "You're risking everything, human. Why would you do this?" Rylan didn't look back. "Because I've seen too many signals left unanswered," he said. "And too many people die waiting." She fell silent, watching him, wondering what kind of being would risk his life for strangers from another world. The cruiser's lights cut through the dark sea, revealing floating wreckage, broken towers, half-sunken machines, and twisted metal. Then the signal grew stronger. A ruined alien ark appeared on the scanner. Lying deep below, Sarai's breath caught. Her eyes widened. "That ship," she whispered. It's the Valon Ark. It was our family transport, my mate." She stopped, her voice breaking. Rylan turned to her. "Your husband?" She nodded slowly. "He was on that ship when the first flood hit. We thought they all drowned." Rylan's eyes narrowed at the screen. "The signal's coming from inside that wreck." Sarai covered her mouth, tears mixing with salt water on her face. "He might still be alive." Rylan started scanning for life forms. The computer confirmed faint readings, very faint. But real Leo grabbed his mother's hand. "Dad?" he whispered. Sarai nodded, hope trembling inside her like fire. "Maybe," she said softly. "Maybe your father still waits for us." The cruiser moved closer, diving into the flood. The lights of the ship illuminated strange shapes, alien structures, glowing roots and moving shadows. Then, something massive brushed past the ship. The hull shook, warning lights flashed. What was that? Rylan shouted. Sarai stared at the window. Something alive moved in the deep, glowing red eyes watching them from below. "It's a guardian," she said, her voice shaking. "The Ark Protectors. They were made to stop intruders. Can you stop it?" Rylan asked. I can try, she said, stepping closer to the control board. She touched the glass window with her palm, closing her eyes. A faint blue light spread from her hand. A telepathic wave. Outside, the giant creature swam closer. Its body made of metal and flesh. Its long tendrils shimmered in the dark. It circled the cruiser slowly. Sarai whispered in her alien tongue, her voice shaking. We are not your enemies. We are family. Let us pass. The creature hesitated. Its glowing eyes dimmed for a moment, but then it roared, hitting the cruiser with its massive tail. The ship spun out of control, alarms blaring. Rylan grabbed the wheel. Hold on, he shouted. The cruiser tilted, scraping against the ruins. Sparks filled the air. Sarai fell to the floor, holding Leo tightly. It's not listening, she cried. Rylan's jaw tightened. Then I'll make it listen. He activated the defensive shields and aimed the light cannons toward the creature. If it wants to fight, we'll fight, but before he fired, Sarai screamed, Stop! She ran to the front window again, her hands glowing brighter. Please, let him try. Her voice echoed through the dark, carrying deep emotion. Not command. Not fear, but pure desperation. Outside, the creature stopped moving. Its red eyes blinked once, twice, then faded to blue. The waves calmed. Sarai fell to her knees, exhausted. The creature slowly turned away, swimming into the blackness, leaving the cruiser alone. Rylan stared in disbelief. You talked it down. Sarai nodded weakly. It understood the truth. That you came to help. Not harm. He looked at her, truly looked this time. She wasn't just an alien, she was a mother, a survivor just like him. The radar beeped again, louder this time. The signal from the Ark pulsed strong, steady, alive. Sarai gasped, her eyes full of tears. He's there, I can feel it. Rylan steadied the ship and whispered to himself, Then let's bring him home. Outside, the dark ocean of Nurea hid secrets older than any war. And as the cruiser descended deeper, both human and alien hearts began to hope again. The deep ocean of Nurea looked endless, black and full of ghosts. The cruiser's lights barely touched the dark, only showing floating ruins and shattered dreams. Captain Rylan kept his hands firm on the controls while Sarai and Leo watched silently behind him. Every beep from the scanner made Sarai's heart jump. There, Rylan said quietly, pointing at the screen. The signal is stronger now. Sarai leaned closer. The small green light blinked faster, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was coming from the half-buried wreck ahead. The Valon Ark. Her people's last hope before the flood took everything. Leo pressed his face to the window. Mom, it's so big, he whispered. The ship's body was cracked open, covered in strange sea plants that glowed faintly blue. Broken symbols of her race floated across its hull. Once proud, now fading like forgotten memories. Sarai's chest tightened. That's where your father was, she said softly. Her voice trembled. He promised he would come back for us. Rylan turned slightly. Then we'll bring him back for you. The words felt strange to Sarai. Kind, human, and full of something she thought no longer existed. Faith. The cruiser moved closer, shaking as underwater currents pushed against it. The wreck loomed larger and darker, holes in its side like open mouths. Rylan switched on the external floodlights. The broken ark came alive in pale blue glow. Pressure's rising, Rylan muttered, checking his instruments. We can't stay deep for long, Sarai nodded. The entrance to the ark should be near the engine core if it's still intact. We can open it from outside. All right, Rylan said. But you stay here with the kid, I'll go. Sarai looked at him sharply. You don't even know the ship's design. You'll get lost, Rylan smiled faintly. I've been lost worse places. Before she could argue, he grabbed his oxygen suit and helmet. Sealing it tight, Leo watched with wide eyes. You're going out there? He asked. Rylan knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Someone has to find your dad, right? Leo nodded slowly. Be careful, human, Rylan chuckled. I'll try. He opened the small airlock and stepped into the water. The flood swallowed him instantly, his suit lights glowing through the black. Sarai pressed her hands against the window, watching the small figure disappear into the deep. She whispered a silent prayer to the old gods of Nurea, hoping they still listened. Outside, Rylan moved carefully through the wreckage. His boots touched soft metal floors covered in sand and coral. The ark was silent except for faint echoes. He turned on his scanner, life signs faint but real somewhere below. He walked past floating debris, Toys, empty helmets, a cracked photo frame showing smiling alien faces. His chest tightened. "You deserved better than this," he muttered under his breath. The further he went, the stranger it felt. Something was humming deep inside the ship. Not mechanical, but organic, like a heartbeat echoing through the water. Back on the cruiser, Sarai's screen blinked. "Captain Rylan, your signal is breaking." "Respond." Static filled the radio, then his voice came through. "Rough, but alive. I'm inside, there's power here. Some systems still working." "That's impossible," Sarai said softly. "The floods destroyed every circuit. Guess your tech doesn't know when to quit." Rylan answered with a small laugh. But his voice soon turned serious. "Wait. I found something through his visor." He saw a soft light in the distance, a glowing pod sealed in metal vines. Inside, a shape moved weakly. "Sarai," he said, his voice tight. "I think I found him." Her heart skipped. "Open it. Please, hurry." Rylan pulled out his plasma cutter and sliced the vines away. The pod hissed open, releasing a swirl of bubbles. Inside lay a tall alien man, skin pale and breath shallow, still alive. Rylan checked the vitals, faint but steady. "He's alive," he whispered. But barely. Then suddenly something shifted behind him. A low rumble passed through the metal walls. The scanner lit up with red marks. "Rylan." Sarai's voice came through, full of fear. "What's happening?" He turned. Shadows moved in the dark water, red eyes blinking like angry stars. "They're not alone," he said, his tone sharp now. "Automated sentries, still active. The machines burst from the wreck. Half-living, half-mechanical guardians, programmed to kill intruders." Their bodies glowed red as they charged toward him. Rylan grabbed the pod, pulling it close. "I've got your husband." "But I'm not leaving him," he shouted, kicking off the floor. The first drone fired. A beam of plasma scorched past him. "Rylan!" Sarai screamed through the radio. "Get out of there." "I'm trying," he shouted back, swimming hard. The drones chased him through the wreck, firing bursts of red light. One shot hit his oxygen tank. Alarms screamed in his helmet. "Damn it!" The cruiser's radar went wild. Sarai saw the flashing red signals. "No," she whispered, her hands shaking. "He's not going to make it." She jumped to the controls, overriding safety locks. "Hold on," she said to herself. "I'm coming." Leo grabbed her sleeve. "Mom, no. You'll die out there." Sarai smiled sadly. "Not if he needs me." She sealed her own small suit and grabbed a second tether, opening the airlock before Rylan could stop her. The cold water swallowed her whole. Her blue skin shimmered in the dark as she swam faster than any human could. Guided by the faint glow of Rylan's light, he turned and saw her coming. "Sarai, what are you doing?" "Saving both of you," she shouted through the comlink. Together, they pulled the pod toward the cruiser, dodging laser bursts. Rylan fired back with his wrist blaster, hitting one of the drones. It exploded into glowing fragments. Sarai raised her hands, sending out a psychic pulse. The other drones froze for a second, confused. The red lights flickered to orange. "Now," she yelled. Rylan pushed the pod upward with all his strength. The tether from the cruiser pulled them in. The airlock opened. Bright light spilled out. They fell inside, the hatch closing behind them. Alarms stopped. The world went silent again. Sarai tore off her helmet and ran to the pod. Her hand shook as she opened it fully. Inside lay her husband, breathing slowly. "Eyes half open, Varen," she whispered, tears falling. "You came back to me." He blinked weakly, looking at her face. "Sarai." "Leo?" "They're safe," Rylan said, pulling off his helmet, breathing hard. "You're all safe now." Sarai looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude and shock. "You risked everything for us." Rylan smiled tiredly. "Guess that's what humans do." Outside in the dark sea, the sentry drones drifted away, silent again. The storm above rumbled softly, as if the world itself exhaled. But as Rylan checked the radar one last time, his smile faded. A new signal appeared. Larger, deeper, pulsing with strange energy. He whispered under his breath, "Something else is down there," and far below in the black heart of the ocean, two enormous red eyes opened, watching, waiting. The cruiser floated in uneasy silence above the black ocean. The only light came from flickering control panels and the soft glow of the alien man resting inside the medical pod. His breathing was shallow but steady. Sarai sat beside him, holding his hand, while little Leo leaned on her shoulder. Asleep from exhaustion, Rylan stood at the control deck, eyes fixed on the radar. The mysterious red signal kept pulsing far beneath them, slow and heavy, like a heartbeat that belonged to something enormous. The machine sensors couldn't identify it. Not metal, not organic, something between both. He rubbed the back of his neck, whispering to himself, whatever that is, it's awake now. Sarai looked up, her voice calm but tense. What did you find? Rylan hesitated. Another signal, much bigger than the Ark. Her expression changed. She whispered a word in her native tongue. Leviathor. What does that mean? Rylan asked. The guardian of the depths, she said softly. A creature made long ago by our ancestors. It was built to protect the world's core from invaders. Half machine, half living energy. It sleeps until it senses danger. You woke it, Rylan frowned. I didn't mean to wake anything, she shook her head. It doesn't care about meaning. It only protects. Before Rylan could respond, the whole cruiser shuddered. A low vibration ran through the metal walls like a deep growl. Leo woke up screaming, Mom! What's happening? Sarai grabbed him, her heart pounding. The radar screen filled with red waves. The signal was moving. Fast, straight toward them, Rylan ran to the controls. Everyone hold on. A moment later, the ocean exploded. A massive shape burst from the water, blocking all light. It was larger than any creature Rylan had ever seen. Scales of silver metal reflected lightning from the clouds above, and its eyes glowed bright crimson. The Leviathan, Sarai whispered. Her voice shaking, the creature's roar shook the sky, sending waves higher than the cruiser. Rylan fought to stabilize the ship. If that thing hits us, we're done. He activated the shields. Blue light forming around the cruiser just as the creature's tail struck. The ship spun sideways, alarms blaring. Sarai screamed, You can't fight it, human. It's made to destroy warships. Rylan gritted his teeth. Then I'll give it something to remember. He pulled the ship up, firing plasma cannons. The blasts hit the Leviathan's chest. Glowing lines appeared on its scales. But the beast barely flinched. It roared again and dove underwater. The radar went blank for a second, then flashed red beneath them. It's under us. Rylan shouted, Brace for impact! The Leviathan slammed into the ship from below, throwing everything into chaos. Leo screamed. Sarai fell against the wall, and sparks burst from the ceiling. The cruiser's hull groaned. Shields at 20%. Rylan yelled. Sarai ran to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. No, please stop, she whispered. We're not your enemy. The creature's glowing eyes looked straight at her through the water. For a heartbeat it hesitated, and as if it recognized her voice. Sarai closed her eyes, her hands glowing faintly blue. Let me reach it, she said. Don't fire again. Rylan turned, sweat dripping from his forehead. You can't talk to that thing, it's a weapon. Not a weapon, she said softly. A protector. And it only attacks what it fears. She stood still, her eyes shining brighter. Her telepathic link reached out through the storm, through the water into the creature's mind for a moment. She felt its confusion, rage, duty, loneliness. Listen to me, she whispered in her alien tongue. I am Sarai of Nurea. One of your own people's blood, the war is over? We seek no harm, the Leviathan's mind pushed back. A thunderous voice echoing inside her skull. Intruder, human scent. Destroy, Sarai gasped, clutching her head. It hates humans, she whispered. It still remembers the war. Rylan's jaw tightened. Then it's got a bad memory, he said, because one's saving its last family right now. He hit the manual override and sent the ship backward. Away from the beast, the Leviathan followed. But slower now, uncertain, Sarai pressed harder, her energy spreading into the water like blue mist. See him, she projected, see what he has done. Images flowed into the creature's mind. Rylan saving her and Leo from the tower, diving into the Ark, risking his life to bring her husband back. The Leviathan's eyes flickered, red dimming to pale gold. Its roar softened into a low hum that made the water vibrate gently. Sarai fell to her knees, exhausted but smiling. It sees you. Rylan, she whispered. It understands, Rylan exhaled, his hands trembling over the controls. Good. Maybe it'll stop trying to kill us. The giant creature circled the cruiser once, slowly, like a guardian inspecting its children. Then it swam down to the Ark wreck again and wrapped its huge coils around it, protecting it instead of attacking. Sarai placed her palm against the window, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered to the deep. The radar cleared, and no more threats. The storm above began to fade, sunlight breaking through for the first time in days. Leo crawled into Rylan's lap, eyes wide. You fought a sea god. Human, he said in awe. Rylan laughed weakly. Yeah, and I'm not doing that again. Sarai smiled for the first time since he'd met her. You showed courage even our warriors forgot, she said. You made the Leviathan remember mercy. Rylan looked at her. Maybe mercy's the only thing worth remembering. For a brief moment, peace filled the small cruiser. Until the ship's sensors beeped again, Sarai frowned. Now what? Rylan turned to the screen and his face went pale. A fleet of ships had entered orbit. Hundreds of drones, their symbols glowing red. Not from Nuria, not from Earth, something else entirely. Those aren't ours, Rylan said quietly. And they're not friendly. Outside, high above the clouds, dark shapes began to descend through the fading storm. Sarai's eyes widened. The scavengers. They came back to finish the planet. Rylan clenched his fists. Then we'll make sure this planet isn't finished with them. The Leviathan's eyes flashed gold again as if it too sensed the danger. Its roar echoed across the sea, a warning to the invaders above. And for the first time in centuries, the humans and the old guardian of Nuria stood on the same side, waiting for war. The storm over Nuria had finally faded. The sea had turned calm, but the silence it left behind felt heavy. The alien ark floated beside Rylan's cruiser. Cracked but alive, the Leviathan swam slowly below, its golden eyes glowing like twin suns under the water. Inside the cruiser, Sarai sat beside the med pod where her husband, Varen, rested. His skin shimmered faintly under the dim lights. His breathing was slow but stronger now. Leo sat beside the pod, holding his father's hand with both of his small ones. "Dad, can you hear me?" he whispered. Varen's eyes twitched, then opened a little. "Leo," he breathed weakly. "My son." Sarai gasped, tears filling her eyes. She bent close, her voice trembling. "You're safe now. We found you." His gaze moved slowly, focusing on Rylan standing at the doorway for a long moment. The room was filled with only the hum of the ship's engines. Then Varen's expression hardened. "A human," he rasped. "Why is there a human here?" Sarai touched his shoulder gently. "He saved us, Varen. He came through the storm when no one else did." Varen turned his head slightly toward her, his eyes still full of confusion. "Humans. They destroyed our colonies, they took our oceans." Rylan crossed his arms, his voice calm. "I didn't take anything from you. I was just trying to make sure your family didn't drown." Varen blinked slowly, his voice cracked. "Why? Why would you do that?" Rylan looked at the boy holding his father's hand. "Because a child shouldn't lose his parents to someone else's mistakes." The words hung heavy in the air. Sarai looked at him with quiet gratitude. Varen's anger faded a little, replaced by exhaustion and curiosity. I don't understand humans," he whispered, closing his eyes. "You fight, you destroy, and yet you save." Rylan sighed. "Yeah, we're a complicated species," he said softly. "But we still know right from wrong." For a while no one spoke. Only the faint sound of the sea outside filled the silence. Then a new sound broke through, a deep echo from the radar. Rylan's eyes darted to the control screen. His face changed. "We've got company," Sarai stood. "More ships?" He nodded grimly. "A whole fleet dropping from orbit. Not from your people, not from mine either." She walked closer to the screen, the glowing shapes filling it. "Those are scavenger drones," she said. "They come after every disaster to take what's left. Vultures," Rylan muttered. "And they're heading right for us." Varen tried to sit up, his voice weak but urgent. "You must leave. They'll destroy everything to get to the Ark's core. It holds the energy of the old world." Sarai shook her head. "No, we can't leave the Ark. It's our history. Our last memory." Rylan's hands moved fast over the controls. "Then we'll fight." Sarai looked at him, eyes wide. "Fight? Against that many? You can't." Rylan gave a half smile. "I've done worse odds." He opened a hidden compartment under the control deck. Racks of compact defense drones and plasma torpedoes. "Old military gear, but it'll do." The radar flashed. The scavenger fleet was descending fast. Drones shaped like dark wings, hundreds of them. Their red lights burned like blood against the gray sky. Outside, the Leviathan stirred. Its body rose from the deep, breaking through the waves. Its roar thundered across the sea. Shaking the air, Sarai stared through the glass. "It knows," she whispered. "It feels the danger." Rylan adjusted the comm link to connect with the creature's frequency. "Let's see if it still likes me," he muttered. Then he sent a signal. A low-frequency pulse through the ocean. The Leviathan turned its head toward the cruiser, golden eyes locking on him for a tense moment. Rylan thought it might attack again. Then it gave a long, deep growl, almost like an answer. "It will fight with us," Sarai said softly. Her voice trembling with hope. Rylan smiled faintly. Then we're not outnumbered anymore. The first wave of scavenger drones arrived, firing red plasma beams into the sea, explosions lighting up the waves. The Leviathan roared back, launching bolts of energy from its fins, each blast tearing through enemy formations. Rylan's cruiser fired its cannons, plasma trails slicing the sky. Drones exploded in bright flashes, falling like burning stars into the water. Inside, Leo watched with wide eyes. "The big one's helping us," he said, cheering. Rylan grinned. "Yeah, your sea friends got good aim." Sarai worked beside him, controlling the ship's shields. Her fingers moved fast over the glowing symbols. "Shields at 60%, she said. "We can hold for now." Outside, the Leviathan swam around the Ark, defending it from every attack. Its body glowed with power, ancient technology mixing with living energy. But the enemy ships kept coming. Faster and more ruthless. Rylan gritted his teeth. "There are too many." Then Varen's weak voice came from behind them. "The Ark. It still has a core weapon." Deep inside, Sarai turned, shocked. "You mean the Sun Core? It hasn't worked in centuries." Varen shook his head. "It will if I wake it. But someone has to connect it manually from inside." Rylan stood. "Then tell me how to do it." Sarai grabbed his arm. "No, it's suicide. The energy will burn anyone inside before the charge completes." Rylan looked at her calmly. "Someone has to stay behind, right?" She shook her head, her eyes full of tears. "Why would you give your life for a planet that's not yours?" He smiled faintly. "Because once my world was dying too, and someone saved my family, and now it's my turn." Before she could stop him, he moved toward the airlock, grabbing his gear. Sarai followed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Rylan, please," she whispered. "You don't have to prove anything." He looked back one last time. "I'm not proving anything, Sarai. I'm just keeping my promise, to never leave anyone behind." He stepped into the airlock. The door closing slowly, Leo ran forward, shouting, "Human! Come back!" Rylan smiled through the glass. "Take care of them." "Little man." The airlock sealed, and he disappeared into the water, heading toward the Ark's glowing heart. Sarai fell to her knees, her heart breaking. "Don't do this," she whispered. Outside, the Leviathan roared louder than before. As if sensing his courage, the Ark began to glow from within, light spreading through its cracked hull. The ocean turned silver in that shining storm. One human's courage met an alien world's last hope. And deep inside the Ark, Rylan reached the ancient console, placed his hand on the crystal core and whispered, "For all of us." The light consumed everything, and the sea exploded with power. The explosion of light lit up the entire ocean of Nuria. For a moment, it looked like the sun had returned to a dead world. Waves rose high into the sky and crashed back down with thunder that shook the clouds. The scavenger fleet broke apart, their ships burning. Torn to pieces by the surge from the Ark's core, inside the cruiser, Sarai covered Leo with her body as the shockwave hit. The walls shook, alarms screamed, and the lights flickered outside. The Leviathan's roar mixed with the sound of storm and fire. Then silence when Sarai opened her eyes. She saw only faint blue light through the window. The ocean was glowing softly like a living thing breathing again. But Rylan's signal was gone. "Rylan, do you read me?" She shouted into the communicator. Static, no answer. She tried again. "Human, please answer." Her voice broke. Varen, still weak but awake, touched her arm gently. "He did it," he said. "He saved us all." Her face twisted in pain. "No, he can't be gone." "He promised." Leo looked up at her, tears filling his eyes. "He said he would come back." Outside, the Leviathan circled slowly around the glowing Ark, its eyes dim, its energy fading. The storm above began to rise again, clouds twisting, wind screaming. But this time the storm came not from the sky, but from the sea itself. Sarai stood, her eyes full of new fear. "The core is unstable," she whispered. "The overload, it's breaking the planet's mantle." Varen tried to sit up. The activation was too strong, it's tearing Nurea apart. She turned to the controls. "We have to find him before it's too late." "Sarai," Varen said weakly. "The ocean will collapse inward. No one can survive down there." Her jaw tightened. "He survived worse. I'm not leaving him." Before anyone could stop her, she grabbed a breathing mask and leapt toward the airlock. Her fingers shook as she typed the coordinates of the Ark's heart. The door hissed open, cold water rushing in. "Mom, don't go." Leo screamed. She looked back and smiled sadly. "If I don't, he'll die alone." The water swallowed her whole. The deep sea was chaos. The light from the ark still burned far below. Bright and wild, Sarai swam through debris and ash. Her blue skin shimmered against the currents. The telepathic pulse of the Leviathan echoed faintly in her mind, guiding her deeper. "Show me where he is," she whispered into the dark. A low hum answered from below. The Leviathan's shape moved like a shadow through the glowing water, leading her to the broken hull of the ark. Inside it was quiet, too quiet. The walls pulsed with fading light like a dying heartbeat. She swam through the wreckage until she saw a faint movement near the core chamber. Rylan, he was floating, his suit torn, blood mixing with the water around him. His hand still rested on the glowing control crystal. The energy had burned through the metal floor, but the core had stabilized. Sarai gasped, swimming faster. She grabbed him, pulling him close. No, she whispered. "You can't die now." His eyes opened weakly, unfocused at first, then softening when he saw her face. "You again," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Tears ran down her cheeks. "Why did you do it?" "You could have escaped." He smiled faintly. "Didn't want to miss the light show." "Foolish human," she said, pressing her forehead against his helmet. "Always trying to save others." He coughed weakly. "Guess it's in our nature." The ship creaked. The walls cracked as pressure built around them. The planet was breaking apart, the ocean pulling inward like a black hole. Sarai turned her head upward. The Leviathan's golden eyes glowed faintly through the glass ceiling. It was waiting. She tightened her grip around Rylan. "Hold on," she whispered, activating the emergency tether from her suit. The line shot upward, attaching to the Leviathan's armor plates. The giant creature roared, lifting them both from the collapsing ark. The pressure crushed everything below. Ruins, wrecks, even the glowing core. The Leviathan pushed through the chaos, its tail slashing the rising waves. Sarai held Rylan close, feeling his heartbeat fading. "Stay with me," she cried. "Please stay." Above them, the surface grew brighter. The storm cracked open, sunlight breaking through for the first time in years. The Leviathan broke the surface in a burst of foam and light. Its roar shook the clouds away. For one glorious moment, Nuria looked alive again. The creature lowered its head beside the cruiser, gently placing Sarai and Rylan onto the deck. Then it looked at Sarai, a silent farewell, before turning and diving back into the deep, disappearing into golden light. Sarai fell beside Rylan, opening his helmet. "Wake up," she whispered, slapping his cheek gently. "Wake up, human." He didn't move. She pressed her hands on his chest, forcing air into his lungs. "Breathe," she cried, "you stubborn creature." "Breathe." Leo and Varen appeared at the doorway, shouting, "Mom!" She didn't stop. "Come on, Rylan, don't leave us now." Then, after one long aching silence, he coughed. Water spilled from his mouth and he took a shaky breath. His eyes opened, weak but alive. Leo ran forward, laughing through his tears. "He's alive." "The human's alive." Sarai let out a trembling breath, smiling through her own tears. "You really don't know how to die, do you?" Rylan looked at her, half-conscious. "Told you. I keep my promises." Outside, the sea began to calm. The waves shrank to gentle ripples and the sun rose over the horizon, spreading gold across the endless water. The ark floated beside them. Quiet now, its purpose complete, Rylan sat up slowly, holding his chest. "Is it over?" Sarai looked at the horizon. "No," she said softly. "It's just beginning." Varen placed a hand on Rylan's shoulder, his voice filled with respect. "You saved more than lives today. You reminded us what we forgot, and courage." Rylan smiled faintly. "I'm just a guy with bad timing." They all laughed. Weak but free. High above, the scavenger ships that survived were fleeing. The Leviathan's roar followed them until they vanished into the stars. And in that final quiet moment, Sarai looked at Rylan, her voice soft and full of something new. "You saved a dying world, human, but you also saved me." Rylan leaned back against the wall, his eyes half closed. "Guess we're even then." For the first time since the flood began, the wind over Nuria felt warm, carrying the promise of a new dawn. The final storm had ended, and from its heart hope was born again. The morning sun rose over the endless ocean of Nuria, golden light spilling across the calm waves where storms once ruled. The air smelled clean for the first time in years. The planet, wounded but alive, breathed again, The flooded world shimmered like a mirror of gold. Inside the cruiser, silence reigned, broken only by the hum of the engines and the soft breaths of those who had survived. Rylan sat near the window, his arm bandaged, his body weak but alive beside him. Leo slept curled up in a blanket. Sarai watched both of them quietly, her blue eyes soft with something that was no longer fear but peace. She had seen the world die. She had seen it reborn, and through it all, a human, one who should have been her enemy, had stood beside her. The door hissed open behind her. Baron stepped out of the med bay, walking slowly, still recovering from his injuries. His eyes searched the horizon before resting on Rylan. "You saved my family," he said simply, "and my world." Rylan shook his head. "No, I just bought it a little more time."